Greetings, dear friends. Today we want to say hello on our one more podcast here at Moscow Calling Podcast in Moscow. Myself is Andrei Klintsevich, and we have Larry Johnson over. He's a political analyst. He's geopolitical analyst. He's got an experience. He's got the serious background, as we're saying that because he was serving at CIA Analytical Services. He has the knowledge, he has all it takes to proceed, to comment, to give us. And you know, one good thing about this guy, that he doesn't feel ashamed to say the truth. You know, he says it like it is. So thank you very much, Larry, for your time. We appreciate you.
It gets me in trouble. There's a saying in Spanish, the fish dies by its mouth.
Well, Larry, I do hope all will be well. And the first question, we want to know what is the current situation in America? And I want to say, tell you a story. I was to shop shows a lot of military exhibitions in Moscow. One of the stands booths had international baseball caps, those. And I checked one nice one, kind of like iconic one. Had a couple of words. I put it on. We went on to the America streets, and then I saw black guys, African Americans, and they were looking at me strange. And it was a D. It was a special department to fight against the drugs. Special department.
Oh, DEA.
So the first question I have is that, can you freely walk in America with a special wording letter like ICS or other things, or?
Depends on the state. There are certain states, like if you were in New York City or Philadelphia or Chicago, some of the major cities, and you're walking around with an ice hat on, you better have a background in mixed martial arts because you'll be in a fight. If you're here in Florida, where I live, Bradenton, Tampa, you could do it and there wouldn't be a problem. So it really depends on the location. But you're correct that it's one of those, if you're wearing it, you're likely to encounter some pushback or even violence.
I asked that question because periodically, from time to time, I see in the mass media, because there are some kind of elements of the Civil War standing against federal things, federal government, and the local people, activists, National Guard, that they don't participate in any other things. Harsh views, and America is close to Civil War, especially supported by Elon Musk tweets or whatever. But from the analytical point of view, we understand that Trump puts order on the streets. He does the law. He executes the law by taking away the illegal immigrants. Another thing, he wants to do it very quick, massive, somewhere with, they get into the houses without the permit and things like that, or they go into the phones, or somewhere federal services, they go over the board with shooting, because our police mostly don't shoot. Is that just in some states, or it's all over across the board? And how do real Americans treat that? Is it positive or not? Is it safe on the streets? So what do you think?
Let's use the standard of walking around Moscow at 2 o'clock in the morning. And can you do that in New York, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Chicago? No. The city streets in the United States are much less safe than what you encounter in, say, Moscow or St. Petersburg. I'll call this selective enforcement. Trump has created a bit of a political problem for himself with the conduct of ICE and Border Patrol. The His initial message was he was going to deport the illegal aliens, the people who entered the country illegally, who were had criminal ties, who were involved with criminal activity. Um, yeah, but instead, what's happened is that there have been a number of cases in which he's grabbed people who, again, they entered the country illegally, but they're working a job. They're behaving themselves. They're not doing anything wrong, and that's that has really created a split within the United States. Um, that we're not at a full civil war yet, but the foundation of it is there because you've got some people who are completely embrace the idea that if you've entered the country illegally, that's okay, that's not a problem. While there are others that say, hey, you're breaking the law, and because you're breaking the law, you need to leave. Um, so that I think is going to play out in the next election in November. And I think the Trump is likely to lose control of the House of Representatives. So this is gonna sharpen the divide because there are states, like where I live, Florida, they're very much against the influx of the illegal immigrants. There are others like the Washington State or Oregon, where it's just the opposite.
Larry, the conditions in terms of the weapons that is free at free access. We know that you can buy guns depending on a state, of course, but how is this streets with weapons with guns? Is it very tough situation or it's okay?
Again, depends on the state. Here in Florida, they have what's called open carry. So you can walk the streets, you can go to the grocery stores, um, carrying a gun, openly carrying a gun. Now, I'm a firearms instructor. I teach people on concealed carry. My own view is, I think you're much better off if you're going to carry a firearm, carry it concealed, because keeping it out in the open, it's easy that someone could actually come up and steal your own gun from you, and then you'd be in trouble. And most people aren't trained for self-defense to be able to prevent something like that. You go to other states like New Jersey, they have very stringent gun laws. Even though the Second Amendment guarantees the right to keep and bear arms, they put a lot of obstacles up. In an example, if I was driving my car, if I was driving, say, to go to upstate New York from Florida, I'd have to pass through New Jersey. And even if I had a gun in my car, unless I had a license in New Jersey, I could be arrested. So it depends on the location. What happened in Minneapolis the other day or last week when this nurse named Pretty, uh, he was carrying a concealed firearm. That was legal, and he had no obligation to tell the police that he was carrying concealed. Under the Constitution, you have the right to do that. You can only be if you're engaged in criminal activity or suspected of criminal activity. Then yes, you could. The police demand that your identity and you'd have to reveal you were carrying a gun. But in this case, his protesting was protected speech. So he was allowed to do, in theory, allowed to do that. And frankly, in my view, these agents that attacked him were not properly trained. They had no reason really to take him to the ground like they did. And it was in the process of that they saw the gun because he was carrying it. It's called an inside the waist band holster. So it's a holster that sits inside your pants. And When they had him down on the ground, they saw the gun.
Mhm.
One officer grabbed it, and as that officer was walking away, the gun went off. That particular model of pistol, it's called a Sig Sauer 320. It has a reputation for actually having what they call unanticipated detonations. Um, so when the gun went off, everybody else thought the guy on the ground was shooting, and they shot him. So I mean, it was in my view, the police ought to be charged at a minimum with negligence and possibly with homicide.
So I do shoot from time to time also. That point is you gotta learn how to take the bullet out and not make mistakes. And another question I have from our, let's say, so officers that see what happens on the streets. Following question: if in America you can legally, as an obedient citizen, buy, purchase weapon, train, and carry it on you, and if at night time in American city and a downtown somewhere there, some kind of bandits will attack you, do you have a right to use that weapon and protect yourself or your family? How come Americans don't do it massively? Because when there was BLM movement and they were going through the stores, the ex-immigrants on Brighton Beach, they got united, they got their guns, they stepped out, and not one store was broken. How come Americans don't get united? How come they don't use that right that is given to them by Constitution to protect themselves? In Russia, you can have a gun with you only if it was given to you as a reward. If you're gonna use it, you're gonna be in court for a long time. But in America, if you're somewhere at the grass of your yard, the court will give you forgiveness.
Yeah, it depends on the particular state. In where I live in Florida, we really don't have those problems. People being routinely attacked and the looting of stores because we have open carry, because we have very liberal gun laws. They have something called stand your ground. Uh, in some states, if you are being attacked, you are expected to walk away, to not stay where you are, not defend your position, but to try to escape. And some, like in Maryland, where I used to live, they had a rule that if somebody invaded your home, you were supposed to run out of your home. You couldn't, that if you shot them for invading your home, you could go to jail. Whereas in Florida, we there's a sheriff just in the next county from where I live named Grady Judd, and Grady's the type. One time they were pursuing a man who had shot and killed a police officer. When they caught him, he got shot 68 times, and the reporters asked Grady Judd, "Why did you shoot him 68 times?" And he goes, "We ran out of bullets." So you've got, uh, yeah, you've got a situation where here in Florida, um, the general rule is if you're in fear of losing your life, you're afraid you're going to be killed or somebody's going to cause you severe bodily harm, you can shoot that person. Uh, and then there's another concept called the castle doctrine. If somebody tries to enter my home without my permission, whether or not they're carrying a weapon or not, doesn't matter. I can shoot them. So what that means is because there is that sort of expectation here, you don't see a lot of that activity. People generally, when you're walking around people who are armed, you're generally pretty well behaved. Um, Whereas there are other states New York City is an example where the gun laws are much more strict in terms of what you can and can't do to defend yourself.
Larry, thank you very much. We truly understand that it's kind of clear for us, getting to be clear, that a lot of people come into Texas where you're allowed to have automatic guns, and often you see the truck stickers. I don't call police, I get my gun out. Uh,
Yeah.
there's another scandal that is going on right now in the United States. Epstein style files. Everybody's it's on everywhere. When they describe facts about simple people, we have two questions. Is it true that the elite of the United States are so too much? Otherwise, they don't have enough. They gotta go into something wild. They go into crime. They gotta something to scratch their, be on the edge. So this data that leaked or data that came out, is it Democrats against Republicans or vice versa, or somebody against Trump or Trump against Democrats? Why is it so well published? Why is it so spilled out?
No, this is actually, I'll call this in some ways, it's a bipartisan issue. It doesn't pit necessarily Democrat against Republican. Um, Trump actually at one point ran one of his one of the issues that he insisted had to be dealt with was releasing the Epstein files. Yet once he became president, the most of this latest term, he did everything to try to cover it up, to walk back his promise. Uh, there are the names of the people that are listed in these documents. There are Republicans and there are Democrats. Then it's not so much political. It is these are the very, very wealthy um, that are being protected, and uh, the it's not just that they were engaged with perverted sexual acts, but especially that it was targeted at underage, young women, and in some cases children under the age of 12. So um, there is a sickness in America, but it's not just this is not confined to America. Um, and the reality is there's a heavy Jewish angle to this. Um, the I'll call them the Zionists are notorious for being involved with sexual abuse of children. They've right now in Israel they've got there's a trial underway against a group of rabbis that had sexually exploited children. So this is a global phenomena, and it involves all countries. I don't know if you've noticed the Brits in particular. They've had Prince Andrew. Now they call him Andrew of Mountbatten. Um, and then the former Lord Mandelson, I think his name was, he was named to be the ambassador to the United States. They were all not just implicated. I mean, they got photographs of these guys, um, and they're now blaming. They're saying, no, no, no. Epstein was he was a tool of the KGB, which KGB didn't exist then. It had been replaced, but they're blaming it all on Putin. That Epstein was an asset of Putin, which it just shows the level of desperation. But the Epstein affair has exposed that at the very top of American society, politically and financially, you have a bunch of degenerates. And I think President Putin commented on this yesterday, referring to the degeneracy of the West, and I think he's exactly correct.
Larry, you partially spoke about Israel and Zionists. Everybody has one question. Jeffrey Epstein, creating such an empire with islands, with jets, with connections, with money making, with compromise. Practically, he was kind of, it's his independent game with in a movie like in James Bond, right, when he was with diamonds and money and cash, or it's a special operation of the government like the CIA analyst. You understand that the government does big operations covering with the businessmen. They get the access to manage these or those politicians from other countries. Push the button. Everybody says, and a lot of people say it's Mossad's project. They think it's KGB. Definitely has no ties to KGB in Russia. But I think, what is it, a Mossad government, or it's a government that did that.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that Jeffrey Epstein was working with Israeli intelligence, Mossad, but he also had ties to the CIA. Now, the nature of that relationship, I'm not sure of, beyond the fact that Epstein was involved with the shipment of weapons in the 1980s to the Contras. So, and the whole Contra operation that involved Mossad, involved Iran. So, um, it is clear to me that Epstein was principally, let's call it, following in the footsteps of his father-in-law. Now, Robert Maxwell was not actually Epstein's father-in-law. He was the father of Ghislaine Maxwell, and that's the woman that Epstein had a long-time relationship with. However, Maxwell himself had been a Mossad asset, and he had been involved. Reportedly, he had been involved as a prisoner in the Holocaust and had escaped and fought with partisans. So Maxwell had ties both into Soviet intelligence, Israeli intelligence, and British intelligence. And when he basically took Epstein under his arm as a protege, Epstein got access, particularly to the Mossad element, and he was tied into very, very wealthy people, including the Rothschilds. The that Jewish family by their own admission, has been involved with manipulating governments and world events for more than 200 years. So this is something very dark and evil.
Truly, this we know a lot more information about it, and this part of this thread goes around the East.